Right, folks, it's just gone top of the hour, so I think let's kick things off. So again, just welcome, morning all, and I think we'll probably jump straight across to Lee to kick us off. So if you wouldn't mind muting your mics, and I'll hand over to Lee.
Well, good morning, everyone. We've been following the path of listening to people's stories, and I think that's a great place to start and to build, and very excited about that. And I'm hoping we can keep that momentum going. However, I must admit that I am feeling a sense of urgency around what waits for us on the other side of lockdown, and looking at this group and seeing very intelligent, experienced minds that have built a sense of trust and connection with each other. And how can we, I'm not even talking about collaborating and all of that kind of business thing. All I'm thinking about is how can we set some goals, set some ideas, think about what is waiting on the other side of lockdown that we need to stimulate in various ways. Where do the greatest needs lie? Obviously, there's the most vulnerable and the need to feed hungry people. What is the government, what as individuals need to do about that? What is our responsibility? That is my first question. My second question is, most of us in the SME arena or business owners, how do we, if you've got staff, how do you pay your staff over the next several months? How do you encourage, what do we as business owners, do we have a voice that we are collectively putting together to inform business owners, to support business owners, and to stimulate the economy in some way? And how do we make that voice known over and above and alongside corporate, and how do we engage with corporate and government? So these are some big questions that I've been mulling over. I can't say I've got any great answers. I do want to just acknowledge Steve has sent me some slides that a friend of his or a contact of his has put together that was relevant to the outdoor entertainment industry. That is an absolutely brilliant outline of a contingency plan for every step of the way. If this happens, then do this. If this happens, do this. And I've got Steve's permission to send that on to the group. And it's such valuable information. I think we need to think about how do we disseminate this further? How do we apply it in our own businesses and lives? So this is, I'm placing before you what has really been top of mind for me, and building a sense of what do we as good minds coming together do about what's going to be happening, what is happening in our country and in the world at the moment.
Sure, Lee, you're really getting us deep in this morning, aren't you? Some serious and interesting questions there. So yeah, I see Herman's looking to make a comment, and I just, before I hand over to Herman, I'd just like to welcome Leighton. I think first time on this morning, Leighton. So welcome on board, and we'll have a chat to you shortly. But perhaps if you'd just like to briefly introduce yourself before we get going to the group. And also just like to say morning to Sarah, who's joined on as well. So Leighton, yeah, welcome on board.
Morning all, thank you very much. I'm sitting in Prince Albert, where it's a nice and quiet and a little brisk this morning, but bright and sunny. I've been a friend of and worked with Guy over some years, and he suggested I join up with you as a interesting forum to hear similar-minded people probing the new normal. And I'm looking forward to hearing what's been said. Thanks for sharing it.
Great, thanks, Leighton, and welcome on board. I'm very jealous of you sitting up there in in the mountains and in the remote areas. Wonderful to be out there, I'm sure. Great. Herman, yeah, would you like to pick up from there?
Well, thank you very much. Before we really go into that conversation deeply, I think we also need to consider that the end of April is not going to be the end of the complete lockdown. I think that's something very important to consider, that there will be still, in my personal opinion, very strong limitations. And not only in South Africa, but most probably worldwide. And I think what Lee raised is very pertinent, but I would also suggest, or I'm suggesting, that we should have a preliminary conversation in order to get our creative juices and our thinking going, in order to have deeper follow-up conversations, because that is, in my personal opinion, a kind of a topic that needs a lot of reflection, a lot of inner work individually, before we put our opinions out there. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Herman. Anyone else like to pick up on those thoughts? If you do, either just raise your hand or unmute your mic. I see the group is getting quite nice in size, so we might need to just manage this a little bit more carefully. But yeah, if anybody else wants to follow up on that, otherwise I can just whip through the group and give everyone a chance. Okay, well, let's do that. So Ian, let's start with you. Your thoughts on the questions and the points raised so far.
Yeah, without a crystal ball, there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think we all realize the fact that business as usual, there's not going to be business as usual anymore. I think that with all and I'm not an economist or a financial guy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think with all these countries pumping money into propping up the economies during this time, that's going to have a knock-on effect in terms of inflation. All they do is pressing the button to print more money. So I think that that's going to have an effect. We've always talked about, at the Chamber, we've all talked about the fact that corporate life is not going to be as we know it. Things are going to change dramatically. We still need face-to-face in certain areas, but I think that this type of platform will be the new norm. So I'm not sure, actually. I'm, as Herman says, I think the effects of this are going to be long after the 1st of May. So I'm not quite sure. I think being independent, running a business from home is the buzzword at the moment. But I think the more you can operate independently without having the influences of this corporate world, I think the better you're going to be. And I think that you have to adapt and look at your business and say, right, well, from now onwards, how do I conduct business? Who do I conduct business, and what is the format that I use that now makes my product relevant? Because there's going to be certain priorities in people's lives. Finance is obviously the first thing. So what we thought was a great product or service that we offered is going to fall down the ranks, I think, because life's going to be determined by people's priorities and what they need to survive.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I'd like to switch across to Steve. Obviously, Lee's referring to some input and insights that you've had from I think an industry which is going to be greatly challenged, and that's the outdoor industry. And whether it's hospitality or outdoor or even tourism, I think there's going to be major challenges in those areas. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Steve.
Sure, thanks, Owen. Yeah, these slides come from a friend of mine that I've made in the last few months. I've been advising in a group the outdoor education industry, which covers a number of the areas that you just mentioned. So there's everything from tourism to school camps to corporate work, etc. And so they've just formed an association with easily 40 to 50 businesses in the last few months. It first came about because of that issue at Parktown Boys that some of you might be familiar with, but it's quickly morphed into how this industry will respond currently and then as we come out of this whole lockdown issue. Because it's got everyone on the spectrum, from people who've just immediately pretty much lost their businesses through to those who are digging into, long and hard-earned savings to make it through with their staff. So that's where that information comes from, and I thought it was quite helpful. I think from my side, one of the things that I'm most interested in coming out of lockdown, I do a lot of work therapeutically with people, individuals, families, which incorporates some coaching, but a lot of it is more therapy minded. And I know that this time is proving to be very difficult for some people from a mental stability perspective. And so out of the actual business side, I'm looking to be able to connect in person with people. I've been doing online work for the last few weeks and be able to see how people have weathered the storm of being isolated. We've seen a big rise in domestic violence over the last few weeks, and that's been globally as well. So all sorts of issues coming to the fore from families being locked up together. So that's going to be a part of my focus as we come out of this. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, very concerning, those sort of elements and how they are impacting families around the place. And it's one of the challenges we're definitely going to face going forward. So it'll be interesting to see, how your insights and thoughts develop on that. Nick, I'd like to switch across to you. Any thoughts yourself on what's been discussed so far?
So my view after lockdown, there's three words here. There's going to be three buzzwords, and that's in business, okay? And that's going to be the contractors, automation, and robots. Those three words are the new words. And what I mean by that is, what lockdown has forced companies to look at is, did they actually need those staff members that they had, the amount of staff members that they had. A lot of companies now in lockdown are finding that they're getting more done from home than what they used to do in their companies, in their businesses. So it's making the employee, it's putting the employee at risk. In America, already 10 million have filed for unemployment. So what companies are going to do, in my opinion, they're going to get outside contractors to do a lot of their work, and they're going to investigate automation, and the robots, because they're just going to concentrate on the final product. That's going to be the main focus. So the living from paycheck to paycheck is very dangerous right now, because a lot of people are insecure, a lot of people are scared, a lot of people are confused, and in my opinion, the home-based business now is better placed than ever. Those that don't rely on a paycheck are in the pound seats. The opportunities are there. For example, myself, what I'm doing is I'm not merely sitting at home and watching Netflix. I've got involved in supplying government with product, and that is just by accident, because it's no use sitting and moping and worrying about, now what am I going to do? You got to do it. Millionaires are made in times like this. And for me, it's been good. And I think once this thing's over, it's going to just get better. That's my opinion. Optimistic.
Great, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I think you made a couple of comments that sort of struck a chord with me there, and that is, how companies are finding levels of increased efficiency in this period, and the question is, how do you turn that into a positive from an employment point of view, not a negative? So how can we repurpose people in terms of things that they were doing, and how can we actually continue to increase efficiencies based on people working remotely rather than actually having to go into an office? So I think those are some of the positives that really come out of that element for me. And then I agree 100% with you. People who take advantage of, or in a position to take advantage of the situation now, will definitely come out stronger at the other end of it. So yeah, some interesting points and thoughts there. Karina, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Hi there. Yes, interesting discussion. Thanks, Lee, for bringing it up. I think it's on all our minds. yeah, I find it quite overwhelming, not so much for my own business, but definitely the knock-on effect worldwide and locally. But I just want to pick up on what Lee asked around what we can do for in terms of people actually becoming hungry and food and stuff. And although I'm not in a position to go out and maybe feed people, I think what I'm finding is that there's not a consolidated place where you can find people who are doing that work. So you want to help, or you even just want to give money, but you are unable to know where to go to find your heart place or where you want to go. And my first question is to the group, do you know if there's such a place where you can go and say, see 100 NGOs, find the ones you want to support, and you get involved or focus on that? Is there such a place? And if not, is that an opportunity to look at?
Great, thanks, Karina. I think some excellent questions there again. And what I'd like to ask folk, if they do have thoughts and ideas as the discussion is going around, why don't you just type it into the chat box, and then we can actually create a thread, that we can refer back to if people do have thoughts or resources or websites or contacts that they'd like to suggest people can connect with. So let's put that into the chat box rather than just trying to get people to remember or write it down while they're talking. I think and then I can forward the chat script onto the group if there's useful information there. Sela, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, you're working with some of those marginalized and vulnerable communities, and you may have some insights in terms of what's been discussed so far.
Morning, everybody. Ivan, before you even called my name now, I was more concerned that I have too much to say on the subject. I'm not even sure where I would start. It's too much to say. The thing is very practical from my standpoint, from my reasons of leaving Joburg and creating a bridge, practically creating a bridge. Literally getting my wife to be on board with the vision of coming down to KZN so that we are a bridge for people that we still kept ties with in Joburg, people like Rivers Foundation, so that we keep doing the work. Because as a coach, that's what I do. But I also have a lot to say, because since 2012, like I was saying to you guys, when we started with the companies that we built to put people in, to give them practical experience, when we started doing that, we even stopped believing necessarily in employment. And I know these are very big concepts to say in isolation like this, but we started believing more in empowerment. So what that meant for us was the guys that we work with, they own their own hustle. So literally, if you are being coached by us, you own your own hustle. You come on board and you get a task, just like I was saying with the car wash. So there's guys in Joburg that we've trained. We get contracts in Joburg, they fulfill. So it's fulfillment businesses. It's more or less like what Nick was saying. Automated businesses and subcontracting. That's how we've been rolling anyway, because we believed. These things. Like I said, I wouldn't know where to start, you guys. It's too overwhelming for me because there's so much that I would want to say about it. I struggled with employing guys in the past. When we owned the accounting firm with my sister, I know you guys know Cindy Diviti. I'm Cindy Diviti's younger brother. When we were pushing the accounting firm, I saw firsthand how difficult it is for people from those communities to even play and participate realistically in the economy. So even now, even with the people that I'm coaching in marginalized communities, our solutions are very, very practical because I deal with these people on a day-to-day basis. I am the people that are around me. So the models that we've built around it, I can't even really participate in this discussion because we don't do employment, we do empowerment. So it's already a different mindset. We're already looking for things like this to be a blowout in the economy so that these guys were not playing any role anyway, and they were struggling to tap in. So now we are in a position where we are saying all the innovators start thinking innovatively. We are looking for solutions. We are selling solutions more than any other thing. And I think that's what I can leave the group with. It's more about selling the solutions. And I have to stop here. It's too overwhelming for me, Ivan.
Sela, yeah, I'm hesitant to allow you to stop because I think you're absolutely on the money here. The new economy is not about jobs. 100% agree with you. It's about creating opportunities for people to empower themselves and create their own opportunities and leverage those opportunities. So I'm very hesitant to let you off the hook, but let's let's carry on a bit. And yeah, I think, you know, the mindset and the philosophy that you have in terms of what you're doing for me is 100% on the money. So I'd love to dig into that deeper. But let's continue on for now, and we'll definitely come back to that, if not today, on a later session, because I think it's absolutely critical, you know, that philosophy that you're developing there. So yeah, Leighton, first time on the group, you've been sort of given a bit of baptism of fire. So I'd love to hear your thoughts from a remote area and what your thinking is and what the mood is in your community out there.
Thanks, Ivan. Yeah, I've not hoped I'd be able to get away with sitting nodding sagely that I was listening, but I guess one has to contribute as well. So thanks for the opportunity. I think what's incredible about being in a small town, it's agriculturally based, is how life just continues. I think Prince Albert's the one district in the Western Cape that has yet to have a case. We have a fairly conservative lifestyle here, very tourism dependent, so that's going to take an absolute pounding. But we're surrounded by a farming community, and the farming community folks are incredibly resolute. They just get on with it. So we've got an award-winning dairy. They've closed down their retail outlet, but they're driving around, and they've now become a focal point for lots of other people to provide products. So they're now a distribution business as well. Down the road is an incredible operation run by a Peruvian and his South African wife called Lazy Lizard. They're a restaurant, coffee shop, internet cafe. They become a shop. They've relicensed. They already had some retail activity, and they're off. They're providing competition to Spar. That's the dominant force in town. And I think that's where we're going to see big changes coming through. I think we need to be tremendously heartened by the fact that the response that we've created as a country, led by the people that lead us, is actually, I think we're second to Algeria in flattening the curve. We're way ahead of many other countries. And I think the reality is that the physical distancing that we're starting to experience is here to stay, as is testing. And we're going to have to find a way to empower people to become entrepreneurs. And Skelo's perspective on how difficult it is to get people up from the grassroots and actually help them avail of the opportunities. The structures aren't in place. There's a great big gap between being a big organized business and being somebody looking to strike out on your own. How is ShopRite? Check is still open, but the spaza shops and the informal traders can't trade. And that, I think, is where we're going to see is the impact of democratization on our communities, how we have a voice and how that voice is real as it relates to life and economic realities. So I think the wise people are seeing the openings start forming. And as has been said several times in the conversation, it's not about the lockdown. It's all around the 2, 3, 4 years that follow on from this. And yes, technology will play a role, but in South Africa, we've got a 39% unemployment rate. We're definitely going to have more unemployed people in 2-3 months' time. And we've got people to feed and people to take care of and people to provide economic opportunity to. And that's where I think we've got to start speaking to unloosen some of the old perspectives that we've seen and how we've approached our socioeconomic realities. I've got no real answers, Ivan. I'm listening at the moment. That's what I'm trying to do, listen and learn. And I value the input and hearing others around me with their perspectives, and hope to connect with you all in due course. Thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Leighton. I think I think you touched on some excellent points there. So pleased to have you on board, and we look forward to engage. I think the more minds, the better. It just widens the perspective and the opportunity for some good lateral thinking, which I think is what's really required in these times. Sarah, I'd love to cut across to you and hear your thoughts. I know you came in a little bit late, but obviously you've caught on some of the discussions. Maybe just let us know where you're at and what your thoughts are on the discussion so far.
Thanks, Ivan, and good morning to everyone. I truly would have loved to give Celo my airtime to continue speaking, because he really just touches a chord. And I mean, I agree with almost everything that has been shared in the platform. But why I was saying that about Celo is because for me, empowerment of our people is key in my heart and mind, as I see how many people struggle. And I'm talking about that with regards to, mental and heart capacity, the awareness, or getting to the point to understand that the power is actually in my hands. And I do agree that we need to help with practical interventions of providing food, because people are hungry now. But what weighs heavily in my mind and heart is, how do we, aggressively push a program where our people are empowered to be self-sustaining from a position of how they think? Because if we are not empowered from that mindset, I'm going to be a victim in this crisis, but I'm definitely going to be a victim in the next crisis. And I really wouldn't want to see a situation where that increases within the next crisis, but how do we empower them so that we have a smaller number of people in a time of crisis who really need that much extension of help? But I do understand and appreciate that, mental and heart capacity, it's very hard, for all of us, because in fact, that's the most difficult thing to do, to change the way you think and to change the way you see things. But so I just want to conclude with one of the things as well that I want to add on. We had a presentation from GIG last Sunday, I think, from a guy, I think your namesake, Ian. And, what he left me with from a lot of things that he said that really has been such a profound thing for me was, from a business point of view, being able to do a risk assessment at this time and be able to see what you can strengthen. And I think someone spoke about revenue streams here, or different income streams, and think in the lines of, in my businesses, how do I add and diversify my revenue stream? And part of that is looking at essential services, and maybe thinking in those lines to say, in times of crisis, what services are defined as essentials, so that in my business planning or my business thinking, I'm able to ensure that one of those revenue streams actually is essential services, which allows then my business to run even in a time of crisis. So I'll end there. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And I think, some great points there. I'd love to cut across to Dawn. I think first time on this forum, but not a newbie to most of us, but certainly an industry that's been massively impacted by the lockdown. Dawn, what are your thoughts? Dawn, you need to unmute. Yeah.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Ivan. Yes, as Ivan knows, and the people that don't know, we're in the exhibition industry. So I've been in the exhibition industry for over 25 years. It's been massively impacted with this transition now, but it's been exciting too, because it helps one reinvent. You reinvent yourself now. You've got to look at things. I've always been one that sees opportunities everywhere. But with the industry I've been in, it's been really, really busy for me. So it's like not a 9-to-5 job. So you're busy morning, noon, and night, weekends, working till late at night. So this has now given us a step out of that environment. And I think, having re-looked at things, Alex is my designer, still really busy, because we've got people that he does renders for, that they still want their renders done. So he's quite busy. He works until like 1 o'clock in the morning every single day. So we really haven't had time out in this time we've had lockdown. So we haven't had time to get bored. There's no such thing as boredom if you're an entrepreneur, because you're always looking for opportunities anyway. We also have an online store, which we are an essential provider for our water sanitizers now, which is we're going to get out into the market, which is quite exciting. And then also we, with Ivan, Trevor, Nell, and Gavin, and Jasper, we've now also turned on to a virtual expo, which is very exciting, which we're hoping to launch this week. So for everyone that's on this chat, the show is on the 20th of June. And we're all working on this very exciting new platform to put your products across. So watch the space, because it's going to be very exciting.
Great, thanks, Dawn. And I love the I love the positive upbeat from somebody who's had the rug pulled out from underneath her feet in terms of her traditional businesses. So fantastic mindset and fantastic approach, Dawn. Well done. Cecile, I think you've also had some interesting changes going around you since lockdown, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. I am, while everyone is talking, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I definitely haven't done enough pivot, because it seems like a lot of people here have done some really good pivoting. And to give, I always thought that the telecoms was essential services, but the telecoms business, no one has, I haven't had any new business in telecoms in this last 2 weeks. So it's pretty much kind of business as usual. But so I'm desperately thinking, how can I reinvent myself in a different direction to get, let's say, short-term income come in, and grow the business as it is right now. But I'm listening very attentively to all of you.
Great, thanks, Cecile. We have gone past the bottom of the hour. I've still got 3 people to get to, so if you all bear with us just for the last 3 people, and then I think we'll definitely pick this conversation up, I'm sure, going forward. So I'd like to switch across to Guy, and then to Jasper, and then finally to Trevor for a final word. So Guy, if you'd like to pick up.
I'm just listening today. Thank you. It's a simple, great subject which we can take further. I'm just listening. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Guy. Jasper.
Yes, I think that last comment of what are essential services and how to prepare, because this is not the last of these kind of crises. This one just has a name of a virus, and stimulated the thought in me. Prior to this crisis, I would have thought accommodation would be definitely one of those sustainable essential services. Except the virus now changed to say, no, we have to have the social distancing. But let's say our crisis was maybe a war or something. Accommodation would have been. So I think it's good to start thinking on, am I, at least with one of my income streams, somewhere in an essential service? And how flexible is it if the crisis changes nature and it's no longer just a virus? It's maybe a famine, or it's something else. So that's the only thought I had to contribute at this stage. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jasper. And then I'd just like to switch across to Trevor for his thoughts, and then I think we'll just wrap up from there. So Trevor, over to you.
Okay, and I've just got an alarm going off next door, but hopefully you can hear me. Listen, I have a multitude of thoughts here, and I believe it's an all roads lead to Rome sort of scenario. And Rome is about basic economics. And at the end of the day, what everyone touched on here had its foundation in some form of exchange. And for us as entrepreneurs, we live and thrive on money coming in. And for some of us, from a listed company perspective, when I have a look at all these people around here, I see the potential of a new listed entity or a new collaborative entity, which is all about the people and the intellect and how we apply ourselves to the new abnormal, the going back to basics, but reinventing how you actually service supply and demand in the marketplace and how you understand it. And I go back to that little picture that I showed yesterday. I think in metaphors. I'm not the brightest guy in town, so I like a little picture. There yesterday was my partner and I, and we were paddling through this blooming rapid, and I can tell you, it wasn't because we had total control. That rapid had control of us. All we were doing was paddling like crazy just to stay upright in that thing. But we succeeded when no one else actually did that. And I think that's what's happening with this crisis. I also agree with Jasper that this is the beginning of many such crises. What is it? Someone's going to have to, I didn't do well at English either. Such of these are going to come at us at a pace. And when Jasper was talking, multiple streams of income. So if we want to be entrepreneurs, if we are driven by the economics of making money, I don't think you can rely on any one form of income. You need to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10, which means you can't be sitting back in a lockdown like this. You've got to start thinking about, how do I take all the information that I've got? How do I service the economy? How do I look after myself first? I've got a family here. You saw my wife. I'm 65 years of age. I'm not planning to retire for the next 35 years, for goodness sake, God willing. But that means we've got to have income coming in. When everyone else is turning out there and saying, hey, the economy is going to collapse and all things, what they're just saying is that the flood water is just being diverted, and we've got to go and find where that flood water is being diverted to, where it starts actually going in controlled canals. And as Ivan and I talked about it, we've got to have a teaspoon that we can actually dip into this flood water and put into our bank. So we've got to work out where that water is actually going and go with the flow, and either be a supplier in that particular environment, which means we've got to find out what people want. But I know as an entrepreneur, I have to be driven by what's in it for me, what helps me survive and thrive, and then I can help other people when I am thriving. Otherwise, I can't help people if I'm battling.
Right, thanks, Trevor. I'd just like to hand back to Lee, and I think she'll then close us off.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to just pick up on what Herman's saying, is that I asked this big question, and yes, all we've done is sort of stimulate some initial discussions, and I would like to take this forward so that we can dig a little bit deeper. I like Cecile's word about pivot, and Sarah talked about mindset, and Stella's talking about empowerment, and each one of those are subjects on their own. And so I would like, so Stella, I'm just wondering, I think it might be the feeling of the group that you perhaps take some time tomorrow and to share a little bit more around what are the projects that you're involved in. I think it comes back to what Trevor is saying, is where is the flow? Are you in the flow? Is there something that we can participate with you in that is both empowering for our nation and beneficial from an entrepreneurial perspective in this group? So I know we might be going more in a business direction, but I think it is also, so it is about that empowerment aspect. But I wouldn't like us to lose sight of Steve's issue, which I think is also multiplied in many different ways, is mindset. Is yes, and like everything, they're those people that are the most vulnerable, the same as they are those people who cannot feed themselves, and it's the same with mental health. There's some people who are on the edges of how they're coping, but everybody, there's a spectrum, and there is something that we can do to contribute, because as Cecile said, and it comes back to this word pivot, how do we help people to adapt quickly to changing circumstances? So these are the questions that still mull for me, and I mention them now so that we can all go away and perhaps do a little bit more thinking, and then come back and share those thoughts and build and build and build, because this is it's thought leadership that we're developing here. And so it's something that we can contribute. Just our conversation can be a contribution. And so in that vein, I would like to ask permission that we share this on a public forum, in the sense that, you know, it might not be the whole, Ivan's recording it, it is being put on YouTube, but if there's a little snippet, if we could just have your permission that we share it, to start getting engagement from more and more people, getting their thoughts, but also that we are leaders where we are, and that we are therefore putting ourselves as a group of thinking people that are making a contribution. If there's anybody that does not want to be included in that, then let me know. Otherwise, I'll just take silence as consent.
Great, thanks Lee for that, and thanks everybody. Fantastic discussion again, and definitely lots of food for further discussion. So look forward to seeing you all on the next chat, 8 o'clock tomorrow. If you're available, we'd love to have you all on board. Go well, have a great day, and see you tomorrow.